Yo, what's going on, everybody? It is time for Stochastic MLB Live Before Lock. Neil's here to break down his softball game last night and our MLB DFS slate. In addition, I have to wear my hat. Precious property. My dad and I having a sleepover. He's staying at my house tonight. I posted on Twitter. He's already stolen my hat once today. The only way to guarantee that he will not steal my hat while I'm doing shows is I have to wear it on the shows. Usually, I wear it to trigger Eric when we're doing the shows together. Not today, though. We got the bucket out on the show. I already see people are excited about it in the YouTube chat, and all the more reason you guys should like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, if not for us, at least for the bucket hat. There's no more prize property going around in the DFS space than this bucket hat from yours truly. But also, Neil, what ended up happening with the softball game last night? Did you win? Did you lose? And how well did you play?
All right. Well, I see Steve McGee asking, is that a bonnet? And I didn't want to even bring it up because I believe Steve McGee yesterday was saying that he was going to bet against me in my softball game. And Steve McGee probably made some money then because we lost the game. It was brutal. I'm not happy. It was a game that I think we should have won. They were I think they're on our level. Like I think that we're pretty comparable to the team that we played. We are Jordan says this is no excuse, but we were missing by far our best player. Another one of our top like 3 remaining players, and our third baseman is out for the year. He got hurt a couple games ago, and he's like, we're missing some crucial players now. So it was brutal. It was everybody playing with our best player, who's usually our shortstop, out. Everybody was playing out of positions. We, in the third inning, I'm the pitcher, as you know, got the first 2 outs, had what should have been a 1-2-3 inning. And then I think we had like 4 or 5 consecutive errors. And I committed one of them. It was a brutal. We gave up 10 runs in the third inning. They also had a couple guys who just hit like dongs, just like so far, like the longest hits I've ever seen in that inning. So we gave up 10 runs in that one inning, ended up losing by 11. It was a brutal game.
You say we, but correct me if I'm wrong. You are the pitcher, correct?
I am the pitcher.
I've never heard a pitcher give up a home run and say, boy, guys, we really fucked that one up.
Okay. Did you listen to the first part there? It would have been a 1-2-3 inning if not for the fact that we committed like 4 consecutive errors with the third out. And also, I mean, I pitched pretty well. I only walked 1 guy the whole game. I had 3 strikeouts in the game, which is probably the most I've ever had in a softball game. I gave up the home runs. To be honest though, Greg, I'm not a good enough pitcher where I have a goal of getting guys out. My goal as a pitcher is just to throw strikes. That's my only goal, is to not walk people. I'm not a great pitcher. It's a lot on me, but there's not that much you can do. Like there are pitchers who are like actually good and like have like do weird things with the pitchers. They can throw it inside, throw it outside. I'm not that good. I'm just trying to get it over the plate. That's all I'm trying to do. So yeah, it's largely on me. As I said, I did commit one of the errors as well. So yeah, I can take some of the blame there.
Throwing error, fielding error. What was the error?
It was a fielding error. I'm trying to remember exactly how it happened. I think that the ball came back to me and it was a little bit fast. I could have grabbed it, but I knocked it down, but like too far away for me to get it. So it was like not like a terrible error. It was like the ball was coming in hard, but it's like I just didn't grab it cleanly. I knocked it down and didn't knock it down close enough to me where I could grab it and throw them out. It was just one of those kind of.
I'm putting this loss on you.
Right.
A lot of
that's fair. That's fair.
Like, a lot of it's like, boy, like we were giving up a lot of home runs. I've never seen the ball hit further. I couldn't. You're saying it was the fault of errors, but you were the one who seemed to be committing at least one crucial error.
There were like 8 runs in the inning before I committed my error, for the record.
How'd you do hitting?
I was 1 for 3. It was my first game that I didn't have multiple hits in a game. I made the final out of the game too. So yeah, it was not a fun. I think that I pitched the best I pitched all year. Like I was like, as I said, I got some strikeouts. I was throwing it over the plate perfectly, but my fielding not quite there. Only 1 for 3, so not my best game, I guess.
Yeah, so I mean, we're looking into the YouTube chat here, and Sean V is here, one of your biggest detractors. Who now he's got more ammo to back. Not only does Neil not know baseball, he can't play baseball either. So that's a little.
I've said that many times. I've admitted that on stream. I'm terrible at softball. I'm much worse at baseball. I couldn't hit a fastball for the life of me.
So there we go. We got a little more ammo there in Sean V's holster there. In addition to that, we got some people figuring out here. Kickstart says Neil had like negative 19 fantasy points. Honestly, it seems like he had many more negative fantasy points than negative.
No, well, yeah, but you only get, they wouldn't have been earned runs. I made that very clear to my team after the inning that those were not 10 earned runs. It was 0 earned runs in that 10-run inning.
Yeah,
but I did give up some hits there.
Was the hit a single that you had?
The hit was I've only had, I think, 2 extra base hits in my like 7-year softball career. If I try to swing hard, I've tried. Believe me, I've tried swinging for the fences. I miss the ball by a foot. I cannot hit hard. Like if I swing hard, I'm not going to hit the ball. So my goal is just to get it outside of over the infielders in front of the outfielders. Typically, is my goal.
Yeah, it seems like you had a really good game. It's if we had to grade you, MLB 2K, you have a rating. You have 50, a 60, lower.
What is the lowest that you can have? That's my rating.
Zero.
Whatever
It's
the
out of
lowest
100.
is. Yeah, I think I'm probably a 0.
All right. Yeah, rough game for Neil on the base, but it's okay. We could bounce back. We're going to talk a little bit of DFS right now. In addition, by the way, also, we had some pretty good stuff going on last night. If you guys were, on Twitter at all last night and saw, we had a lot of people that did really well, particularly using our new Sims tool, which, by the way, if you guys want to check it out, there's a link for that below. But also our lineup generator that we're going to be talking about over the course of the show. I know you had said that somebody on your show earlier, it was Scott Tarnack in the YouTube chat. He said he won 15 grand last night using the MLB lineup generator. And then in addition, people who are crushing using the Sims tool because the Sims tool is really high on Met stacks and being light on Spencer Strider. So that was a really good slate for us. And the really only 2 teams that I was stacking with regularity last night was primarily the Cubs and the Mets secondarily. I know that you and I were both in the $5 last night. I was in first, second, and fourth for a lot of the night. And then that Ozzy Albies homer kind of knocked down some of my Mets stacks because the Braves stack started to overtake him. But it was a good night last night. Hopefully we get right back to it today, starting with Ace of Spade. Ace of Spade has a question for us. What do you think it might be?
No idea. Ace of Spade. He's so unpredictable with these questions. I'm going to pull up Josh's Twitter so we can talk about some tiers.
You're right, by the way. It was a tiers question.
Oh, it was a tiers question. Okay.
It was a tiers question. Ace of Spade wants to know our top options for each tier. So I've got it pulled up here. Believe it or not, they allow you to make some stacks here of the Coors Field game, which they usually exclude, but not today. So I'm going to be really interested to see where Josh falls on.
I don't think Josh did it for me today.
Oh my God, Josh had the day off. Well, nonetheless, I have lineups built out here, so we could do it on our own here. And listen, if you're playing DFS, any exposure you get to the Padres, I think is warranted. Tier 1, we have Juan Soto and Fernando Tatis, both as options. I'm leaning towards Tatis as the better play. Both of them really strong fantasy options. But tier 1, starting off with getting to some Padres where I can, want to look at Fernando Tatis in tier 1. Tier 2 was Matt Olson for me. Tier 3, JD Martinez. Tier 4, Brian Reynolds. Tier 5, we could get Manny Machado to correlate with go with Tatis or Soto in tier 1. And then tier 6, I got to Christian Yelich the most there. So Ace of Spade, those are my favorite options across each tier. I hope that helps you build out your lineups for today. And let's just get into talking.
Here's an important thing that I need to address, because J-Rock says you can't do that to yourself, Neil. You got to say 50 or 60 at least. Come on, man. I feel like I can't trust you tonight just for saying that. To be clear, I mean against Major League. Like, we're talking about Major League. If I were a Major League player, I'm a 0. In softball, I'm a league average player, I'd say. Maybe slightly below league average.
All right. So how many players are on your team?
Maybe 12 on the roster still.
12. And are you including the injured players right
now? So no, I'm not including the injured players.
Okay. So of the 12 players, where would you rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 12? Just ranking. You got the first best is 1, second best is 2. What number are you?
Probably somewhere around. I mean, I have the added benefit of being the only one willing to pitch. So I have that going for me. So I'd probably put myself 10th or 11th.
That's terrible.
That's on my team. My team's pretty good, though. We're an above average team.
Wait. So you're trying to make a case that you're a league average player. Your team lost 10-0 last night. You were responsible.
No, we didn't lose 10-0. We lost 17-6. We lost 17-6.
All right, so you lost by 11. Sorry, I said you lost by 10 runs, and you actually lost by 11. My bad.
You said we lost 10-0. That's a whole different.
Jordan, what's worse, 17-6 or 10-0? One's losing by 11 runs, one's losing by 10.
That's fair.
Especially when considering he's the pitcher. It's true, and he's the pitcher.
I'm a below league average player, okay, but I'm okay. There are some teams that I'd be pretty good on. There are some teams. There are some teams I would be by far the worst player, but there are some teams that I'd be pretty good.
We just gaslit into having Neil try to convince us losing 17-6 is good.
We had a bad game. We were missing our best player. Everybody playing out of position.
Not you. They had. So if you weren't there, what would the final score have been?
I mean, no idea. I just wouldn't have gotten so many outs. You know, we would have lost like 30-4 probably.
I'm going to say if you weren't there, you would have lost 11-9.
Wow. Having never seen any of us play, Greg's got some opinions.
Sean V.
I mean, that's very possible.
Neil, just an atrocious softball performance.
I mean, the worst part is I actually think I had my best game of the year. Like, my actual pitching was like on point. I was getting strikeouts. I was throwing one strike, getting a strike, and then like throwing it short a little. Like, I think that I had my best game of the year. I just didn't come through for us.
How many home runs did you give up?
I think just 2. But
two.
they were monster home runs, I gotta say. I was impressed.
It was the LA De La Cruz first homer.
Yeah, it was like, holy shit. Like, literally, like, there was one actually it was a softball that was a foul ball that was hit the hardest. It was like our outfielder literally like turned to the ump like, do I really have to go get that? It was hit so hard.
We got a super chat from Jamie Moore. Love you, Neil, but let's get on with it, fellas. So Jamie is laying down that he's donated money to no longer hear about your softball performance from last night. So we're about to move on anyway. But yeah, shout out to Jamie there. And by the way, as we're about to get into the pitchers, shout out to Underdog, who is sponsoring our show today. And you want to know the easiest way to make money, Neil? It's not playing DFS with any of our advice. And not that it's not going to help you, but it's signing up at Underdog for a couple of different reasons. If you sign up using the link that we have below at Underdog, you're going to get a $100 bonus deposit match up to $100. In addition to that, they have a free square over there. Free square. Here is all that you have to do. You go play Jimmy Butler over 0.5 points. I know we're talking baseball here, and this is a basketball offer, but the over-under for points on Jimmy Butler at Underdog is 0.5. I know he's my enemy. He's going to score a bucket tonight. Take it from a man who's wearing a bucket hat. Jimmy Bucket's going to score at least one basket tonight, and when you do, you're going to have your free square locked in over at Underdog. So sign up using the link we have below or using the promo code Stochastic, and you are going to get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit and access to that free square. Jimmy Butler over 0.5 points. If you're anybody you know has a gambling problem, call or text the number 1-800-GAMBLER. There is no hotline number for people who wear stupid hats on DFS shows, unfortunately. Let's talk about pitchers for tonight, Neil. And I think we have to start with Shohei Ohtani. He is projected for nearly 40% ownership on DraftKings, on FanDuel, 35% ownership. So he is by far the most popular pitcher on the slate. Modest salary, 10-4 on DK, 10,000 only on FanDuel. Shohei Ohtani in cash games, you guys are playing him. In tournaments, I think you also want some exposure to him, but relative to what the field is doing, are you going to be overweight to the field on Ohtani, underweight, or about even with the field?
So I'm trying to use the simulator tonight. As you know, it's I haven't figured out a fast way to do it, so I don't know exactly where I'm going to end up. If I were using my classic approach, I would probably end up pretty close to the field, to be honest. I think I would probably we've got the field right around 40%. I think that I would probably typically try to end up around 40% of Shohei Ohtani. He does have negative leverage in the top pitchers tool, 40% projected ownership, 24% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. But again, I don't mind eating some chocolate pitcher. It's also interesting that he's cheaper than Christian Javier, cheaper than Garrett Cole. He has the best odds of being a top 2 pitcher by 8% on the slate, and yet he's not the most expensive player on the slate. So obviously a great play, but with the 40% ownership, I don't think that I'm like trying to go well over that. My guess is I end up close to the field there. How about you?
Yeah, so I am only playing one lineup today because I got my play date with my dad today, right? We're going to be hanging out today, and all of the lineups aren't out, and I'm just not going to be able to adjust post-lock. So I'm just playing one lineup today. Shohei Ohtani is in it, but I did for the purpose of trying to figure out what the best exposures would be so I could talk about it on the show. I did run lineups for both FanDuel and DraftKings through the lineup sims. I also put out videos on Twitter earlier where I ran through the exposures that I got to, and I did another update after that as more lineups came out. And I was almost right at the field on Shohei Ohtani. DraftKings, I was getting to him in a little over 40% of my lineups. FanDuel, I was getting to him just a little bit under 30%. So splitting hairs, but like slightly overweight on DraftKings, slightly underweight on FanDuel. I think he's by far the best pitching play on the slate. He's struggled a little bit at times, especially since the first month of the year, but There's so much strikeout upside. The salaries come down a little bit. It's really hard to ignore Shohei Ohtani. So great piece of chalk today. I think that the ownership is more than warranted. So Ohtani makes sense. But if you were going to pivot off of him, Neil, which high price pitcher, if any, do you think is the most sensible one to go to instead of Ohtani? Because the other pay up options, none of them are all that popular. We got Cole at 11,000 projected for 15% ownership. Kristen Javier, 0.5% projected ownership. So if you were paying up for a pitcher who was not Ohtani, who would be your guy?
Are those the only other two that we're considering as far as I guess
I mean,
we
it could
throw
be no.
Luis
I just
Castillo?
threw out two players. It's
Okay.
whoever you want it to be. It could be.
It's probably Garrett Cole. I mean, I don't love the matchup with the Red Sox, but Luis Castillo coming in at 24% projected ownership. Actually, I mean, Christian Javier is kind of interesting. He's getting 0.5% projected ownership, 8% chance of being a top two pitcher. Depends on how chalky the rest of my, like if I'm going with major chalk stacks, it would probably be Christian Javier at 0.5% ownership. Otherwise, if I'm going like with, if I'm not too concerned with the ownership of the rest of my lineup, it would probably be Garrett Cole with the second best top two pitcher odds on the slate, despite a tough matchup with Boston, going a little bit under owned relative to his top two pitcher odds. So I think my first pivot is probably going to be to Garrett Cole, followed by Luis Castillo, and then I'd go to Christian Javier. Just if the lineup is otherwise very chalky, I'd go to Christian Javier. Who's jumping out to you at the top?
It's going to be Garrett Cole for me, just based on talent, right? So
Right.
by the way, I'm gonna give a couple different answers for different sites. For DraftKings, the answer is going to be Garrett Cole. $11,000. You're paying an extra $600 from Shohei Ohtani, but it's not that hard to find the extra $600 on DraftKings. If you're looking at our top two pitcher odds, we have Garrett Cole at 16%, Shohei Ohtani at 24%. So there's definitely an advantage for Ohtani, but he's got nearly 3x the ownership of Garrett Cole. So I don't think Garrett Cole is a bad pivot if you have an otherwise chalky lineup to lower some of the exposure for FanDuel purposes. Something I tried to do in a bunch of lineups yesterday and ended up being a super, super annoying tilt. And that is the fact that I wanted to get to Justin Verlander as a pivot off of Spencer Strider. For a second, it looked like it was going to have some life. And then Verlander was just as bad as Strider was yesterday. But I think you can make a similar case for Luis Castillo over Shohei Ohtani on FanDuel, where if Castillo pitches well and gets the win, those are points that are not going towards Shohei Ohtani. We've got Luis Castillo at 5.6% projected ownership on FanDuel, whereas Ohtani is at 34.8%. So I came in overweight to the field on Castillo when I ran FanDuel lineups, and I really do think that's a sensible way to get off of Shohei Ohtani with Luis Castillo. The matchup isn't necessarily ideal, obviously, for him on the road against the Angels, but is a team that can be strikeout prone. Joe Adell now being back with the Angels adds a power bat to the lineup, but a player who swings and misses a ton as well. So is Luis Castillo somebody that you are considering in tournaments today, or are there just other high-priced options you like getting to before him?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. He's third on the board in terms of top two pitcher odds. He's only 9,800. Fine matchup. Like the Angels, it's not the best spot in the world, especially in Los Angeles, but it's still it's an exploitable matchup. Getting 24% ownership, so that's the only reason that he's not like at the top of the board in terms of pivots for me. The 24% ownership, 13% chance to be in a top two pitcher though is second on the board. So yeah, I'm totally fine going to Luis Castillo, and obviously the field is as well. I think he's the third highest owned player, pitcher on the field. So he's getting the ownership is going to be there, but he's certainly worth playing at 9,800.
And then let's also look at some of the cheaper pitchers. The expensive options are plenty today. We just listed through a bunch of them. Dylan Cease is another option up there, although he's really struggled this year. I don't know what happened to Dylan Cease in the offseason, but just not the same pitch as he was in previous years. I think he's about appropriately owned. You got him 9% owned over on DraftKings, FanDuel at 3%. If you had lineups of him here or there, that's fine, but it's hard for me to prioritize Dylan Cease considering the drop-off that he's had this year. The other pitcher that's really popular today, and we'll kind of move through the different price tiers, right? We got a lot of games on the slate. It's big. There's a lot of players to talk about. But focusing on some of the popular options, Tyler Wells is projected for 34.4% ownership on DraftKings and then 13.6 on FanDuel. FanDuel is actually priced all the way up to 9,700, still picking up ownership. DraftKings, $8,300. He's really standing out as a mid-range play by the field. In cash, I think this is pretty simple on DraftKings. You're going Ohtani and Tyler Wells as your pitching combos for cash games. For tournaments, though, Tyler Wells is the pitcher I came in most underweight to the field to when I was running lineups before. How are you viewing Tyler Wells? So at $8,300 in a good matchup against KC, looks like a good points per dollar play, but how do you weigh that against all the ownership?
Yeah, I mean, he's pitched well this year, up to around 27% strikeout rate for Tyler Wells. I agree with you. Makes all the sense in the world as a cash play. Looks terrible. Like from a top pitcher's perspective, though, just major negative leverage, both in terms of top two odds and top two value odds. Makes me not really want to play a ton of Tyler Wells. I'm with you. He's getting 34% ownership, 12% chance of being a top two pitcher, 8% chance of being a top two value pitcher. That's not somebody that I'm going to want to target, even though, the price looks right for him as somebody with a 27% strikeout rate at 8,300. The matchup is nice against Kansas City. A lot going for him. I understand why he's getting some ownership, but it's high enough that I anticipate that I'll be underweight to the field once I've run my sims.
Yeah, and looking at Tyler Wells' numbers, this is a pitcher who he's clearly made improvements, right, over previous years, but it's still hard for me to totally buy into it, especially because his fastball velocity has actually dipped this year from last year and from the year before. So 2 years ago, his average fastball velocity was 95.2 miles per hour. Last year, 93.7. This year, 92.9. And he's just never been a great strikeout pitcher. Last year, he had an 18% K rate. This year, it's improved to 26.6%. But it's still a guy who I do expect regression to going forward. He's actually giving up more hard contact this year than he did last year. That's an issue. He's giving up less soft. He's creating less soft contact than he did last year. If we go to his swinging strike rate, it's not really changed. 12% for his career, 12.1% this year. There's nothing in the data that suggests Tyler Wells is a guy that should be a fantasy stud. And I have been on the wrong side of him in multiple slates this year, Neil, but I was hardly getting to him at all when I ran through the Sims. And a lot of it just has to do with how high that ownership is. So I'm going to be looking elsewhere and just hope that Tyler Wells doesn't break the slate.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to come down to the Sims for me. Like, I'm not going to go out of my way to fade Tyler Wells, but I imagine, given what we see in the top pitchers tool, I'm going to end up underweight to the field. And that's what I would try to be if I were like hand building lineups. If I were using my usual process, I'd try to be underweight to the field on Tyler Wells. So yeah, I think that is the correct move.
And then if you're looking in the mid range, are there any pitchers that you'd want to play as pivots off of Tyler Wells? And this is more going to be DraftKings specific because when you look at FanDuel, he's 9,700. So he's just one of the expensive pitchers on the FanDuel slate. But for DraftKings at $8,300, is there a guy in the mid range that you prefer to get to instead of Tyler Wells? Or is it just you prefer to spend up, go cheap? But any mid range guys do you think make for good pivots off of Wells?
Logan Allen's a little bit interesting to me. It's a really tough matchup with Houston, obviously, but no Jordan Alvarez. Is that confirmed? Actually, I haven't seen the as of this morning. It looked like Jordan Alvarez is probably going to be out for a little while. I assume he's not going to be in the lineup here.
List.
Oh, he's on the injured list now. Okay. Yeah. So no Jordan Alvarez helps a little bit. Still a really tough matchup there, obviously, but not as daunting as it usually is. So I think Logan Allen is somebody that I might be willing to take some shots on as a pivot. Jordan Montgomery, kind of interesting against Cincinnati, also getting some ownership, also getting 20% ownership. So, it's not like he's going unknown, but he's 14% less ownership than Tyler Wells. So I do think Jordan Montgomery against Cincinnati is somebody that I'd be willing to pivot to a bit. As far as other off of an $8,300 price tag, I'm trying to see who else is like close that would make sense as a pivot. I think those are the two.
For me, it's Logan Allen when I was running through my lineups earlier. And a lot of it's based on talent, right? And I think he made a good point too, is that even though the Houston Astros lineup is, one of the better ones that we have in baseball, Logan Allen looks like an extremely talented pitcher. He does get the benefit of playing the Houston Astros without Yordan Alvarez, who is one of the best hitters that we have overall in baseball. And you look at the numbers so far that we've seen from Logan Allen. I mean, Allen, 2.76 ERA. Sure, it's going to regress a little bit, but still, he's a 3.22 FIP. If you look at the strikeout rate for him, it's solid at 23.9%. This is a young pitcher who is a really, really well-regarded prospect. Coming into the year, he was ranked 61st overall. I have the Fangraphs rankings in front of me. So 61st overall, third in the Guardians organization. This is a well-regarded young pitching prospect who's generating good results. Also has always had really high strikeout rates in the minor leagues, which makes you think that he's a fantasy-friendly type pitcher. So Logan Allen in the mid-range, when you're getting him for a fraction of the ownership of Tyler Wells, that's a spot that I like to go to with Logan Allen.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. I like the Logan Allen I'll throw Yu Darvish in there, even though he's in Colorado. I mean, it's not like we're afraid of that Rockies lineup. He's just 300 cheaper than Tyler Wells and getting 3.5% ownership, 6% chance of being a top two pitcher. I think I would be willing to take some shots on Yu Darvish if I were, if I were making my own choice instead of seeing what the Sims do for me. I think I do have some interest in Yu Darvish there in the mid range as well.
All right. And what would be the let's see, we have Yu Darvish priced at 8K on the road in Colorado, though. It's always tough when you're looking at Coors Field pitchers because there's an immense downside, but
Right.
in tournaments, you often care more about the upside than the downside. There are definitely times that I consider pitchers at Coors Field. It's not Yu Darvish for me today, though, mostly because the Rockies aren't popular. That's one of the things. I want like a talented pitcher who's also going up against an offense that's picking up some sort of exposure. So Yu Darvish, not quite for me today, but Logan Allen's the guy that I gravitate the most to in that mid-range. What if you're going cheap? Are there any punt plays that are standing out to you as far as pitchers go?
Yeah, Adam and I talked about it a little bit on the morning show. Adam was really interested in AJ Smith. Is it Sharver? Let me double check the name. But the rookie pitcher pitching for Atlanta today is kind of interesting as somebody who's not getting Shawver, AJ Smith Shawver, who I had never heard of entering today, to be clear, but getting 1.6% ownership. He's just 6,500. I was looking at his strikeout rates in the minors. He struck out a lot of bats in the minors. Who knows if it's going to translate to major leagues, but he's pitching against Washington today. Like it's a great matchup for him in his first start. He's just 6,500. He's coming in with a great minor league strikeout rate. So I'm willing to take some shots. If the field's not going to go there, I think at 6,500 the price is right to the extent that I'm willing to definitely go there in some lineups.
For me, I am leaning most towards Ranger Suarez. The matchup is clearly terrible for him, but he is the third cheapest pitcher overall on the DraftKings slate, depending if you want to consider Michael Grove, who's going to be, like a long reliever type pitcher after there's an opener coming in. Ranger Suarez at $5,300. I hate the matchup against the Dodgers, obviously, but 2% owned and the kind of salary savings he opens up at $5,300. It's not a strong advocacy for playing him, but if you just compare the other pitchers who are really cheap today, or at least priced around him, you got Garrett Whitlock, who's on the road against the Yankees. You've got Adrian Hauser, who doesn't work very deep into games. Michael Grove is on the road in Philadelphia and also is somebody who I don't presume is going to pitch very long because there's going to be an opener in that game. So if I'm going really cheap, Ranger Suarez is the cheap option who ended up landing into like 20% of the lineups when I was running through and sorting out my lineups earlier. So Ranger Suarez, $5,300. You're going to feel not great about him. But if the case here is if you absolutely needed a punt pitcher, Ranger Suarez is the one to go to. But you don't have to go that cheap. I'm more saying that if you needed the salary savings, that's where I think that you should be going. Any other cheap pitchers that you're getting to in your lineups at all?
The reason I was looking away there is I'm realizing that I got to, in my 2000 crunches that I'm trying to use for the simulator, I got to literally 0 shares of AJ Smith Jobber, and I'm like, well, I don't really want that, so I might try and run another set here to try and get a little bit there. Other pitchers that I in the cheap range. I mean, I do have some interest in Adrian Hauser against Oakland. He's not getting a ton of ownership, 3.8% ownership. As you said, he doesn't typically pitch deep into games, but in a matchup with Oakland, I at least have some interest there. I don't know if there's anybody else that I love here. Yeah. Not really, I guess is the answer. Outside of, Ranger Suarez, I mean, I hate the matchup with the Dodgers, but it does look great in the top pitchers tool in terms of leverage. Not really. Outside of AJ Smith Shawver, Adrian Hauser, maybe going to a little bit of Ranger Suarez sounds okay. I don't see anybody else that I really want to play here.
All right. Anything else that we haven't talked about, a pitcher that in general you think we should bring up before we move on? Because next, we're going to be, I'll check Discord to see what questions we have from everybody. My notifications haven't been working on the Discord app, so trying to reset it right now. And then I'm going to open that back up, see what questions we have. If you guys have those at me, I'll figure out what the questions are. And then we'll talk about the lineup generator, run some lineups through there, and then we'll look at Pick'em Pro, and we'll try to find some plays for you guys over on Underdog, who are the sponsors for today. But any other pitchers you like, Neil?
I mean, you talked a little bit about Dylan Cease. Looks okay. He's playing against Miami. It's a fine spot. Sonny Gray, 9,500. It's a tough matchup in Toronto, but 1.4% ownership for a pitcher as talented as Sonny Gray is kind of interesting to me. Coming in 8.5% chance of being a top two pitcher, 2.1% chance of being a top two value pitcher. We do have some positive leverage on Sonny Gray, so I think I do have a little bit of interest there on the high end as well. Yeah, nobody else really that I'm that interested in. You know, you could play Yuri Perez against the White Sox. Looks okay, coming in under 1% ownership. A little bit of leverage to be had there. Yeah, I'm sort of intrigued by Luis Medina against in Milwaukee. I don't know that I'm really going to go there, but 0.5% ownership, 10% chance of being a top two value pitcher is at least something worth mentioning. But yeah, nobody else that I really think I'm getting to.
Yeah, for me, nothing else too much to talk about other than we should bring up Jordan Montgomery. I think is a fairly safe option at $7,300 at home. Positive matchup against the Cincinnati Reds. He's only $7,300 on DraftKings, so I think that he is a pretty solid option. And then over on FanDuel, only $8,200. He's my favorite cheapish end option over on FanDuel. 8,200 projected for just 10% ownership. And then over on DK, I think he's very serviceable. 20% ownership at home. Positive matchup. So like Jordan Montgomery there. Let's see, were there any other super chats? There was no other questions for us in Discord. I had one question, but it was related to MMA, so I could answer that not on the show, the MMA question. But if we have no more to talk about at pitcher, Jordan, do me a favor. Pull up the MLB lineup generator. It's time to break down some MLB lineups for everybody. And if you guys want access to the MLB lineup generator, this is the best entry-level DFS tool that we have anywhere at stokastic.com. And I think a lot of these things work in tiers. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. If you're just getting into DFS, I think you start with the lineup generator, you make some money there, then you get to, a platinum package, you buy the tools we have, and then from there, right, you start to have success on that. And then that's when you move up to our new Sims tools, right? So I think this is really good. We kind of do have tools for every single different player, depending on, what your expertise is, also how much dollar volume you're playing. We've got, cheap entry level tools to DFS, and then all the way up to the sim tool. So I really do like all the packages that we have here, starting with the MLB lineup generator, which is going to make lineups for you. It's super easy to use and it's cheap. You're signing up for the first time, you get access for less than $5. Let's build all stack types, Jordan. And big slate, 13 games, so we'll make balanced lineups. Any guesses from you, Neil? What do you think we're going to get to most frequently?
The Padres, I think is like I also did lineup generator earlier, and I think the Padres were the stack that I was getting to the most, followed by the Braves, if I remember correctly, and ton of Shohei Ohtani as well.
Yeah, so that's also been my experience building out lineups, both in the lineup generator, simulator, all of that. I've been getting to, like I mentioned before, about even with the field on Shohei Ohtani, although here we got to a good amount of Ohtani. And then in terms of the hitters, a ton of Padres stacks. We're going to be talking about more on them in a second. Padres playing in Coors Field, picking up a lot of ownership. It seems like warranted ownership today. So the Padres, I'm going to be loading up on them. Fernando Tatis, Brandon Dixon, Gary Sanchez. So it looks like we are getting to, let me make this a little bit bigger. By the way, see, we got the team logos in here now.
I love it. Makes it so much easier for me to easily spot, like whether it's a 5-3 stack, a 4-4 stack, etc. Just seeing the logos is so much easier.
And then also seeing a lot of Brewers, it looks like. Yeah, so primarily exact same stuff I was running through earlier, actually. Yeah, Padres stacks, Brewers stacks. Those are our top two ones to get to. By the way, there's Jordan Montgomery popping up as well as a cheap pitching option. Luis Castillo showing up in some lineups. Garrett Whitlock, we didn't really talk about him. I don't have a ton of interest, but 15% of him as a cheap pitching option. Anything else you notice?
Let me see. Just responding in chat. I was curious what the question was. Somebody asked, am I trying to lower my diversity when using the Sims tool? And I'm not sure exactly what that means. Yeah, I mean, as expected, getting to a ton of the Padres, Shohei Ohtani. I did not realize that Gary Sanchez was having a revolution. Somebody brought it up on the show earlier. I was like, I had not noticed that Gary Sanchez is good again. Yeah, some Brewers here. Yeah, nothing really. Do we do all stack types here?
We did Contrarian. No, we did
Okay.
balanced.
Okay. Because I know I was just curious because the guy who took down 15K last night, I asked him and he apparently did all stack types. It must have been a contrarian lineup that he won with because couldn't have had Strider, I would assume, if you're winning a contest last
Yeah.
night.
No, definitely you didn't have Strider in winning lineups last night. That was for sure. And you wanted to be stacking against him. Maybe by diversity, he just wants people from different walks of the world.
Yeah.
Looking for people different nationalities, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. So I just responded in chat, but you should be essentially trying to match the field with your lineup. So you want your lineups to look as much like what the field's lineups are going to look like as possible when you enter them into the Sims tool. Yeah, sorry, Medina interest maybe was a bit much. That's fair.
Let's check out FanDuel now and see what's popping up in the FanDuel lineup generator now. And yeah, go all stack types, but balanced lineups, Jordan. Still balanced. Yeah, balanced, no locks. Let's see. See what we get in a run of 20 lineups here. I'm seeing a lot of Padres again.
As
expected. Not a surprise at all.
Huge ownership on the Padres on FanDuel, even more so.
Great Kid said first place in the jukebox had Strider last night. Really? Wow. I'd have to go look at that. He must have just he must have played every single. He must have played Strider and stacked against Strider then.
Right.
Because you had to have Alvarez a catcher with multiple homers last night.
Oh, sure. I think I had 100% Strider last night, so I guess I was not going to be winning anything because I didn't have any bats against my pitchers.
Let's see. We have in here a lot of Brewers. So interesting. So for FanDuel here, we got to more Brewers than Padres. Padres still look like the second most rostered stack. But still, Brewers, Padres, Ohtani at pitcher again. Who else is coming up at pitcher?
Rich Hill.
Interesting. Rich Hill. Tell you, I'm not playing that old piece of shit. Jerry Act. The only person on this planet older than Rich Hill, although Dick Mountain is a fantastic nickname, is Emac. Other than Emac is the only person in the sports related world that's older than Rich Hill.
Yeah, Marcos, I don't play pitchers against my bats on a 5-gamer. Usually 4 game is kind of the cutoff for me, and there even with 4 games, it's like hit or miss. Some slates I will play one bat against my pitcher. A lot of slates I won't, even on a 4-gamer.
Did you do you know the backstory of the Dick Mountain thing?
I mean, his name is Richard Hill, so
yeah. So there was a time though, baseball ran the players wearing alternate jerseys. So the players wearing alternate jerseys, they were allowed to put whatever they wanted on the back of their jersey. So Rich Hill went with D Mountain.
That is incredible.
Yeah, that's what he went with as the nickname on the back of his jersey. And that and thus a legend was born. So I like him, but the reason you're a legend is because you're older, right? There are no young legends.
That's true. That is true.
So Rich Hill, not really for me today. Interesting getting to some Pirates there as a contrarian stack, but yeah, it looks like primarily Padres. Brewers is another stack option to get to. Anything else that you're noticing here?
I mean, yeah, some Braves there as well, as Jordan's pointed out. Yeah, pretty interesting that the pitching ownership is so spread out. And Rich Hill, I mean, as you said, that's kind of a surprise to me that we're getting to 12% Rich Hill in these lineups. But yeah, Shohei as the number 1 pitcher, not a surprise there.
All right, so let's go and look at our MLB MLB Pick'em Pro tool, because once again, we're sponsored today by Underdog. And listen, over 0.5 points for Jimmy Butler. We've got game 4 of the NBA Finals tonight. I expect the Nuggets to win. Everybody knows I'm a Jokic guy, but I think Jimmy Butler is going to put up 1 point today. So you sign up at Underdog using the link we have below, and you're going to get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. In addition to that, like we said, you got that free square over 0.5 points for Jimmy Butler. But here we'll talk about some baseball for today, and we'll look at Underdog. And by the way, if you guys want to sign up for Pick'em Pro here, also a tool here, you're going to get access to Underdog, you're going to get access to Prize Picks, No House Advantage, and you could get all of that for a very cheap price. Also, another thing here, less than $10 when you sign up for the first time using the link that we have below. Really, really useful stuff. You guys are playing on these pick'em sites, and maybe you're playing in a state that doesn't have legal sports betting. But let's see what's standing out here.
I think it's worth just mentioning that you can make entries across sports. So if you
Yep.
are here, you're just a seam head, you can still take advantage of that Jimmy Butler free square and then just do baseball picks for the rest.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we're going to be talking about some baseball. The basketball show is coming on a little bit after us. We've got them coming on in about an hour. So after our show ends, stick around the YouTube channel. Watch, I believe it's Waffy and Adam breaking down the NBA slate today. But if we're looking at baseball here, Neil, and we're talking about Underdog, what's standing out to you? What looks good on the board?
Yeah, I think this Fernando Tatis is a new one. I don't think it was there when Lofty and I did an Underdog show earlier today. So seeing that one on the board, over 2.5 total bases. Normally I wouldn't touch an over on 2.5 total bases, but Fernando Tatis in Coors against Austin Gomber. Yeah, count me in for that top bet on the board.
Yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, a lot of times on these pick'em sites, you're not going to be able to get exposure to Coors Field players. And then same like tiers for DraftKings. Usually don't have the Coors Field games in there, but we got Fernando Tatis props in here. Are there any other San Diego players? Not that are like we've got the under for strikeouts for Darvish, but no other props for San Diego hitters that project well. In terms of strikeouts, I like the Logan Allen number. 4.5 strikeouts is the prop. We've got him projected for 5.8. I think it's a pretty favorable number, especially like what we're talking about earlier. No Yordan Alvarez in there for the Houston Astros. Alvarez on the injured list, dealing with an oblique injury. So Logan Allen, like his over. Fernando Tatis, also like his over. By the way, I don't know if it's coincidence, but over the course of the last 2 days, Neil, arguably like the 3 best hitters in baseball right now, all on the injured list. Aaron Judge dealing with a toe injury, Yordan Alvarez oblique, and then Pete Alonso, a wrist injury.
I don't think it's a coincidence, Greg. I think there's a conspiracy here.
Who do you think's responsible for it?
Joe Biden.
Yeah, probably. Most likely. Most likely. Let's see what chat thinks about that.
Yeah, I bet chat will agree.
If this was a basketball show, it would be getting a lot of, the chat would be flying right now. Chat would be flying. Anything else you want to talk about that's standing out to you from an Underdog perspective here?
Yeah, I mean, so that Logan Allen, I like that call out. Lofty and I played that in our card earlier today. Definitely one of my favorites. I generally prefer going with strikeout bets. So I do like this Tyler Glasnow as well. I'll take the under. I just think that strikeouts are so much more projectable than other aspects of baseball. So when I can find a plus EV strikeout bet, whether it's an over or an under, I'm going to trust that more than which, I mean, it's all math. It's not actually that logical, but it's like one swing of the bat for, we have the under on Bryce Harper, just one double gets him over that. So it really is like, I should prefer that one, but it's more projectable. I trust the strikeouts more. So in general, just play the math, use the tool. If it tells you Bryce Harper is going to hit under 1.5 total base 60% of the time, that's a better bet than a 58% of the time for Tyler Glasnow. But I like the Glasnow as well.
All right, my mentions, notifications, back on Discord. Einsteinium wants to know, do we think this is a slate where going mid-range of pitchers more viable than paying up? My most rostered pitcher is Shohei Ohtani, so I think it's very viable to pay up for pitchers today.
Yeah.
Ant8604 wants to know, how would you approach the 555 FanDuel contest? Like a cash contest or like a GPP? You should still be stacking and trying to find leverage. So on a 13-game slate, one thing that's kind of nice is that you generally aren't going to get any kind of crazy ownership on any one spot. It'll be spread out a little bit. But yeah, you still want to be stacking, and it's still a tournament, right? And it's got, let me see off the top of my head, because I don't know exactly how many entries it has. But I'll pull it up so I know to answer here. But we have the 555 on FanDuel. Yeah, it's still 600 entries in it. Like, you still need to beat 600 people out. And don't forget, too, the prize pool is $300,000, and 100,000 of that is to first place. If you don't finish in one of the top spots, like, you're not profiting in that over time. So yeah, you're playing it as a GPP lineup, because you also don't want to, you're not playing this to min cash. If you play this to min cash, you are going to lose in the long run. You have to play for some first. So play it as a tournament lineup. Let's see, any other questions? No, it looks like we've got that all covered. So Neil, let's move on and start talking about some of the stacks here. And when we're talking about stacks, we have to start by talking about the San Diego Padres. By the way, San Diego, do you know what that means in German?
Whale's vagina.
That is correct. I learned that from a documentary about an anchorman. San Diego today is projected for the most ownership on the slate. They're projected to be the most popular. 17.4% owned over on DraftKings. And then on FanDuel, we have the Wales Vagina Padres projected for 19.7% ownership. So they're the most popular team coming in. What are you going to do with them when they are this popular? Are you going to be overweight to the field, underweight at the field? It's a lot of ownership going to San Diego.
Yeah, I imagine I'm going to end up overweight to the field on San Diego. We have positive leverage there, 17% projected ownership, 20% chance to be in the top stack. Could you ask for a better spot than in Colorado against Austin Gomber? That's about as good as you can hope for. And I know San Diego has been underwhelming so far this year, but they're all healthy. You'd expect them to be good. A lot of talented bats. They're going to turn around at some point, and I think that today is the likeliest scenario for when they turn around. So my guess is I'm going to end up overweight to the field on San Diego, and I'm not going to be mad about it.
You know when else they turned around, or at least momentarily, when they're playing at that ridiculous Mexico City stadium and
Right.
they put up a gazillion runs. I thought that was going to be the turning point of their season. That hasn't quite been, but now they're at Coors Field, another really hitter-friendly park. I expect really big things from the San Diego Padres today, so I like getting to the Padres. It's a good stack. I understand they're popular, but this is one of the spots where I think the ownership is warranted. So Padres, a team that I'm definitely going to be getting overweight to the field on, but right behind them in terms of ownership, we have the Atlanta Braves projected for a ton of ownership, 17% ownership for the Atlanta Braves on FanDuel today. So the second most popular stack right behind the San Diego Padres. And then on DraftKings, also the second most popular, 15.5% owned. Their top stack odds, less than half of what the Padres are at. So you're looking at a team, it's in a matchup against Josiah Gray. Josiah Gray, a talented young pitcher, has good stuff, but is wildly inconsistent, gives up a lot of homers. What are you going to be doing with the Braves when they are pretty close to being as popular as the Padres?
Yeah, I mean, the Braves look like a fade to me. Like, I would want to be underweight to the field on the Braves when they're getting 15% ownership with a 9% chance to be in the top stack and 2% chance to be in the top value stack. So an expensive team. They're the Braves. They're obviously a very good team. My guess is I'll have a good amount of Braves as like as one-offs, as secondary stacks. I'm definitely going to be underweight to the field, or my normal way of building, I would be underweight to the field on the Braves as primary stacks. I'll have to see at this point, I still don't really have an idea of what the Sims tool is going to give me. But my classic way of building, I would be underweight to the field on the Braves.
Yep. I believe earlier I'm trying to remember all of the stacks. I believe the Braves were the stack I was the most underweight to. And like I said, it's a good spot against Josiah Gray, or it's an upside spot, I should say, against Josiah Gray, but it's so much ownership. And I view the ownership going to the Padres as warranted. I view the ownership going to the Braves as just a little bit too much. So Braves, team that I'm going to be underweight to. Padres, about even with the field to overweight to as far as a stack goes. Individual hitters, though, I think this is a slate you want to be well overweight to the field on a lot of the Padres. Great spot for them at Coors Field against Austin Gomber. Going to be popular, but I think the ownership is warranted. Nobody else really picking up all that much ownership, Neil. No other team is projected for double-digit ownership on the DK slate. The next most popular team is the Milwaukee Brewers at 9.7% ownership against Luis Medina. So you look at the rest of the slate, everything else is contrarian. Which team do you like to get to outside of the Padres? So what's the team you look at as the second most favorable stack for the slate? And not necessarily like a team that's like 1% on, you get 3% ownership to, like a team that you actually think is a good spot that you want to get to. And then we'll look at some really contrarian stacks.
Probably Milwaukee would be my number two. We have some slight negative leverage to Milwaukee in the top stack tool. 10% projected ownership, 8% chance to be in the top stack, 9% chance to be in the top value stack, but still 8% chance to be in the top stack. They're in Milwaukee against Luis Medina. It would probably be Milwaukee number two. If I really want leverage, I would go to the Dodgers over Ranger Suarez. I thought about going the Dodgers instead of Milwaukee, but like Milwaukee clearly has better odds in terms of being the top stack. But I do really like that leverage on the Dodgers. So I would consider the Dodgers honestly in single entry. I know you're high on Ranger Suarez today. I don't know. Are you also high on the Dodgers at all?
Yeah, it was overweight to both sides. I think both of them make sense because you've got a pitcher in Suarez who is just underpriced relative to what we've seen out of him as far as results in the past. But then he's also got a really good matchup against the Dodgers, who are not picking up any ownership. So it's really weird to me, right? Like, how do you get into a spot? Which, I mean, I guess it's just because of the size of the slate. where you have an offense as talented as the Dodgers that aren't picking up any ownership, and then a pitcher who's serviceable and as cheap as Ranger Suarez not picking up any ownership. So something kind of has to give in that spot. And I think it's a good GPP spot. I think it's something you want to be overweight to both sides of.
Yep.
Relative to ownership, I think it's easier to be overweight to the Ranger Suarez side just because he's a pitcher. Right. Like I think that Ranger Suarez warrants more ownership as a pitcher than the Dodgers do as a stack. But I like being overweight to both sides and not really too many qualms about that for me. And then I agree with you also. The Brewers, if I'm looking for a secondary team to get to, when I've been running lineups throughout the day, anytime I've run lineups through any process, team I get the most exposure to, the Padres, team I get the second most exposure to, the Brewers, both of them really good spots. Luis Medina is a well-regarded young prospect. He has good stuff, but he has pretty consistently gotten his ass kicked at the big league level so far and is not in a situation with Oakland that is in any way favorable to developing young players. So I don't really think it's going to get too much better for him going forward. Here are his starts so far this year, Neil. He's given up at least 3 earned runs in all of them. And his last 2 starts, 2 innings, 6 runs. And before that, 5 1/3 innings, 5 runs. So, I mean, he's gotten hit hard basically every single time he's been out there. He's got good stuff. He's cheap, but they're just basically having him out there to slaughter every single night, which is basically the nature of playing for the Oakland A's right now. Any super contrarian options do you like getting to? Like a 1 or a 2% owned offense that stands out to you as a spot that the field isn't getting to that they should be?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the Dodgers getting 2.7% ownership. We've talked about them enough. Outside of the Dodgers, I mean, Houston, always an offense you can go to. Logan Allen, as we've talked about, is a pitcher that we have some interest in, but also Houston on the other side getting 2% ownership, 3.4% chance to be in the top stack. I have some interest there. Kind of a little bit of interest in St. Louis against Ben Lively. It's not, I'd prefer it if you were in Cincinnati, but a little bit of interest there. Don't love playing Toronto against Sonny Gray. You can always sign me up for some Twins, and they look pretty good leverage in terms of top value stack. 4.2% projected ownership against Yusei Kikuchi. Kikuchi certainly is prone to giving up some big games from time to time. 16.8% chance for the Twins to be the top value stack. 3.9% chance to be in the top stack overall. So, basically neutral in terms of top stack odds, but then major positive leverage in terms of top value stack odds. You can certainly, somebody said it in chat earlier, you can certainly play the Twins in lineups with San Diego and ace pitchers because they're not very expensive. So the Twins are a team that I'm interested in. And Washington, I don't normally love playing Washington. I do like AJ Smith-Shawver today, but also Washington is facing AJ Smith-Shawver in his major league debut. You never know. It can go a lot of different ways in a pitcher's major league debut. So I do like playing Washington as well at 3% ownership, 3.6% chance to be in the top stack, 7% chance to be in the top value stack. I have interest there as well. What's standing out to you?
Yeah, so looking through the board right now, and I'm also on the same page in terms of, I mean, the Dodgers, there's such a big drop off, right? Because if you look at our top stack odds, you get Padres right around 20% top stack odds, and Jordan's got it up on the screen. You got the Braves around 10%. Then you got the Brewers just short of 10%. And then you got nobody on the rest of the slate projected for more than 5% odds being a top stack. So you could always make a case for the Dodgers when they are going to be low owned. But if I'm picking out just one spot here, I'm going to gravitate towards your Minnesota Twins, Neil, as the one team. And it's for a couple of reasons. One is the top value odds, right? We've got this team with just great points per dollar projections. They're really cheap. And the reason they're really cheap is because everybody who's notable for the team basically is hurt at this point. It's half the starting lineup is out for the Minnesota Twins right now, and almost all of the biggest names on the lineup not in there for Minnesota. But it's a matchup against Yusei Kikuchi, who is a pitcher who's been extremely hittable and blow-up prone the last couple of years. So even though this is not a great lineup that he's going to be facing, right? Like there's never been a point in time that Kikuchi's consistently been able to get major league hitters out. So the Twins, for a really cheap price point, it's really easy to use them as a secondary stack, pay up for the Padres, and then go with Ohtani, a pitcher, and still the somewhat contrarian lineup. So your Minnesota Twins, I'll give them a vote of confidence today.
Love it. All right, we're on the same page.
Anything else here at the top stacks board that we did not talk about? Any other offense that you're going to be prioritizing?
I don't know that there's any others that we didn't talk about that I'm prioritizing. I mean, you can always play the Yankees against Garrett Whitlock. 2% projected ownership, 3.6% chance of being the top value stack. Sort of interested there. Yeah, I think I'm reaching at this point. If I'm naming other stacks that I have interest in, there's none that really stand out to me as great spots here.
So let's answer a question that we have in Discord then from our guy, Just Locks. Just Locks says, what stack type do you and Neil like today for FanDuel GPP? So I primarily make 4-3 lineups on FanDuel. Those are the ones that I have found the most success with. So I'm always going to answer 4-3. And I assume that that is what you mean, Just Locks, by stack type.
Yep. Yeah. 4-3, I think is 4-3 and 4-4 kind of are the only stack types that I'm playing on a slate this size. You can also get 4-2-2, but
yeah, 4-3 is primarily what my lineups are. So the way that I've been doing it in the Sims tool is actually I upload multiple different lineup types and I mix them together into one crunch and then I upload it and then it'll sort the best ones for me. But 4-3 are the ones that I get to most predominantly. So Justin, 4-3 is what I'm going to suggest. And then Einstein, he wants to know, how do we feel about, and by the way, he followed up, that is what he meant. Perfect. Einstein, he wants to know, how do we feel about Baltimore against Daniel Lynch today? Are the Baltimore Orioles a team you're getting exposure to?
Good question. I mean, they look very neutral in the top stacks. So like they don't stand out to me at all, but they are, a good enough offense that certainly if you feel good about Baltimore coming at 3.4% ownership, yeah, I feel like they're definitely a stack that I would be happy to get to, even though they don't stand out in the top stacks. So they're a good enough offense. Daniel Lynch doesn't really scare me. They look very neutral in the top stacks too at 3.4% ownership. So I'm more interested in them than like they'd be in my top probably 10 stacks that I'd go to would be Baltimore, but they're not standing out as like a great leverage spot.
Yeah, I think that they're fair. I had 2% exposure to them, right? So for a team that's 3% owned, it's not a team that I feel like it's needed to jam in. And if you have exposure to them, it's fine. They're just kind of non-disco. That's what most teams are going to look like. On a 13-game slate where a lot of teams play, there's going to be a lot of teams that are like 2, 3, 4% on a stack that's like more or less warranted. That's kind of where I come in on the Orioles.
Yep.
And looks like we don't have any other questions. Neil, any final thoughts for you on this slate before we wrap up here?
No, I'm excited. I think that I'm gonna get my lineups in today, Greg. So I'm excited about actually using Lineup Simulator today. Hopefully you guys are also using either the simulator or Lineup Generator, which people have had a lot of success with recently. Hopefully we can make some money tonight. Go Padres.
One other note right here, we just got an updated Angels lineup because Gio Urshela was scratched, so he's not going to be in the lineup. A little bit of a change there for the Angels, but nothing really too significant. But just of note, if you have Gio Urshela in your lineup, he's not playing today. But that is going to do it for us today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you have not done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. 30 minutes from now, NBA Live Before Lock is coming up, so go check out those guys. Have a great weekend. Peace out, guys.